Hello, Mustang fans, and welcome to another episode of the Mustang Owners Podcast. I'm your host, John Clore, along with my co-host, Mike Ray, and this is the show where we say everybody has a Mustang story. Well, Mike Ray, everybody has a Mustang story if they're in a Mustang club, and the guys I would say that are in the clubs that are on the leadership positions, those guys have a lot of Mustang stories to share. And especially you and our guest tonight.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the best thing about our podcast is you don't ever have to own a Mustang. You didn't have to be a huge fan, but everybody has a Mustang story. So we can get every single person on this planet Earth on the podcast, so we will never run out of content or people. So yes, but our special guest tonight filled the same shoes I did here in Michigan, and he's going to tell us a little bit about that tonight, and we're going to have some fun.
You know, that's all of you out there. I know you're thinking to yourself, you know what, well, maybe I've owned my Mustang and I'm into the podcast because of all the people that we have on, their stories. Sometimes we'll have the royalty and engineers, and sometimes we have some guy with a beat up SN95. That's the beauty of the podcast. But tonight we want to concentrate on one thing. If you are in a Mustang club, then you're going to want to know a lot of the things we talk about tonight. And then here's the other thing, Mike. If you are not in a Mustang club, then you're going to want to know a lot of the things that we're talking about tonight. So this is the perfect episode for you. So let's welcome to the podcast, Mark Bedel, the former president of the Greater Pittsburgh Mustang Club. Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, John and Mike. Much appreciated.
Well, no, what's appreciated, folks, and let's put this out front. What's appreciated, Mark, is the fact that you watch the podcast and you do comment. Sometimes you send me a text or an email. You send Mike, and you're thinking along the lines we are. And what happens to frequent commenters, Mike?
Yeah, they get on here, don't they? They become a guest real quickly.
They either get mentioned on the podcast or they're a guest. And Mark, that's why you're on. You've given us so much food for thought since you've been following us, and there's a lot going on. So what we want to do tonight, since both of you have just recently relinquished your leadership roles as presidents of very large Midwest Mustang clubs and have been at it a long time, you have seen the hobby, unlike a lot of people are there in a club or maybe just joining or been in it a long time, have been armchair members. You guys have seen the hobby from the 30,000 foot spot. Now that you're out of that day-to-day activity, you can back out and see things like Mike. Every other day, Mike sends me a note, like shaking his head. Boy, the times they are a changing.
they are definitely changing to not even recognizable anymore sometimes.
Well, so that's what we want to ask. So, Mark, what we want to do tonight is we want to talk about 3 or 4 big items that are facing our clubs today. And by the way, thank you for trying to solve one of our issues, which is trying to get young people involved in the club, because Mike, how did he get such a young guy to replace him as president? What was our problem? We got
he was in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. I mean, it was it was a combination of luck, just being hyper aware. And I hate to use the word fresh meat, but boy, when you see someone young walking into a meeting. My wife and I and others are just kind of all over them, welcoming them and trying to, and I think that's a big part of it. I mean, when you think about joining anything, and, I've been on several, I've had the fortunate, time when I was working as a professional to be on several boards and even more committees. And it takes a lot for somebody to cross that threshold. I want to join this club, but boy, I don't know, there's all these strangers and that's for anybody. But I think these days, particularly young people, and when they get themselves up to the point where, okay, I'm going to go to a meeting or I'm going to join this club, it's taken them a lot to get to that point already. And I think, the members of any club need to do whatever they can when they have that opportunity to be welcoming and give them a nice soft landing, a nice welcome.
Yeah, and you certainly did that. And we were so happy to be able to do a full podcast on the transition, what we'd call, Mike, the smooth transition of government, which sometimes isn't so smooth. but so the first question we get of anybody that's thinking about joining a club or has been in a club, and they get nervous because they're starting to look around, Mark, and they're going, geez, where's the fresh meat? So where are the young people? And of course, we tried to answer that the last couple of episodes. So I'm going to ask both you, Mark, and Mike, this whole worry that we have that we're all going to take the traditional paid for membership Mustang Club that has meetings and does things together and has a car show. That business model, if you will, is on its way out, and we are doomed to not being able to transfer our Mustang hobby through the club world to young people. Is that what you guys see? And Mark, I'll start with you. Or do you see a different? Is this going to be a trend we're going through, or just a little growing pains until we pass the torch, or is this going to be a tragedy?
Well, it's interesting. That's a good question, John. And the best way I can answer it is we do have another club or two in the area that are what you would call Facebook only type clubs that you've mentioned. And we've actually we have several members that belong to those clubs. And I did have a chance to talk to, there's a big event that a huge church does out our way. It's called Mustang Night. And our club goes, their club goes, everyone kind of goes. And I had the opportunity to talk to the husband and wife that actually have that particular club. And, one of the things that's attractive is there is no club structure, typical club structure. The rules and regulations are pretty finite. They have, I think I might get this wrong, but they have 6 or 7 events per year. You have to be recommended by a current member to even be considered for membership in the group. But the requirement, as I understood it from them, is you must attend at least one of those 7 events or you get kicked out. That's it. There's no dues. There's no anything. Now,
it's more common than you think, John.
Yeah, I guess so. Okay.
It is.
And I'm not going to name names here, but we did have a couple who I know pretty well in the club actually go to one of their events. And there's couples, kind of in our age range. And they were sort of put off by the whole thing. They said no one came up to them to talk to them. And it was very, very kind of an austere experience. And they were not inclined to go back. So I don't know, Mike, if you've had,
Exactly. I've been through, exactly. I can relate to everything you exactly said right now. And yeah, John, I heard that from a lot of clubs. I would probably say the majority, I'm going to go with probably 60% of clubs do have requirements. Like you need to attend at least 1 or 2 general meetings a year. You need to attend at least 1 event a year. You need to volunteer at 1 event a year, something like that to keep your membership in good standing. We never did that. I think that's why we attracted so many people, because they didn't have to do anything. They could just show up when they wanted to. And, we really started spoiling them when COVID hit and we couldn't all meet in person anymore. So we were actually starting to, Zoom our meetings. So anybody who wanted to log in and Zoom, and we would do our meetings that way, and we kept the meetings going throughout COVID, and that just opened up a whole new world. So when we got back, some people still weren't, in the safe mode, if you will, to go in public. So we kept, we did Facebook Live for the meetings for the people who couldn't attend and things like that. So it's just kept growing and growing and growing like that. But yes, definitely had members where I came to this event or I came to this meeting. No one talked to me. No one greeted me. I didn't feel welcome. And I don't want to be associated with that. I didn't have fun. So why would I go back?
That's absolutely amazing to me, guys, because Mark, I was under the assumption that, you get into one of these Facebook clubs and, you first of all, you request to join, you give them your name, maybe your car. And then once you're on their forum for a while, you start making comments. The admin guy would go, I want 1 or 2 strikes and you're out or whatever. If you're arguing with somebody, I get that. But to me, I thought that's where the trend was going, that, a lot of people would either left our standard, long-standing paid for membership clubs that have done so much for so long to try this new Facebook group to see if it's easier, less stressful. But you guys are telling me it's not necessarily easier and it's really not less stressful.
Right.
Yeah.
So Mark, why would you think that they wouldn't be more accommodating to meeting new people, especially when you agree to an event and you all show up and nobody's talking to each other? Is that the phone syndrome? We'd rather sit in our car, be on our phone, and not talk to the guy parked next to you?
Yeah, the couple that I was referring to, I didn't get a ton of details from them. I guess I was so surprised when they had said that to me. I was kind of like, wow, okay. I mean, because the husband and wife, they seemed very, very welcoming. So I don't know, when I went up to talk to them, so I'm not really sure what happened. Maybe it was just a one-off bad experience. I don't know, but
because John, like, so the social, if a club has a social director or a club ambassador or something like that, we try to ask them to, if you see a new member, bring them up to us, bring them up to the president or another board member or another member that has a car similar to them or something like that, and kind of do an introduction. It doesn't always happen, or it could be a bigger event where you don't get to certain people, but that's just one option that we try to do, is try to have, like I said, an ambassador or a social director or something, try to seek those people out and make them feel welcome.
Well, okay, that leads to the big question then. So why is it then that when we talk to a lot of the younger owners, say in the mid 30s to their early 40s, who love the cars and coffee style events where there's no strings, they show up, they walk up and down the cars, they kick some tires, they may hang out and talk, and they may just leave. Why is it then that those cars and coffee events seem to attract so many young people, but not permanently? I mean, Mark, don't you see that in your area, everybody's throwing a cars and coffee now?
They do, and we actually have a fairly large one, but there is a fee associated with it, and this particular one, and I think I think all the fee dollars go to a charity, is kind of their thing, but yeah, it's interesting, and I have actually never been to a cars and coffee myself. I thought about visiting the one that I just mentioned, but just have never done it for whatever reason. But yeah, I don't. I think, I don't know. And again, Mike has far more experience, with club leadership than myself. But I would think that the shows are probably the biggest issue. And I know you had spoken with Jacob about that, and we'll kind of see what happens there. But I have a tendency to agree with the long drawn out shows. I mean, to be quite honest with you, if I didn't have to work one, I'd probably be gone in a couple hours myself too. So I there is something to be said for that. Or John, like you and Mike have mentioned, the show within a show. Yeah. Which I've always thought is a great idea, and I never really got a chance to. I mean, I mentioned it to our board and got some positive nods, but we've never moved forward with something like that. But that could be something to be done in the future as well.
John, the cars and coffee, John, we have that huge one here. I think it's in Plymouth or something like that. And I believe they charge, I believe they charge like $5 or $10, and the kids come there, they stay there for a couple hours, and they get 600 plus cars there. Wow. And, there's exotics, there's the Ferraris, there's the Lambos, there's the Aston Martins, all those kind of cars are there too. And then they go and goo goo gaga over those too, and, meet people, or Ford will bring a GTD or, a Ford GT or something like that there for them to drool over as well. And it's kind of a cool factor for them. And it's from 9 to 11 they stay, and then they go back home and they got their whole day to do what they want. They don't feel like they're stuck at an event or sitting on the concrete all day long. And, that's not for them. It's not for the younger generation. So that's why I think they're so successful. But yeah, I get it from the younger group and why they want to do that. It's not so much of a commitment by attending one.
Well, none of you guys drink as much coffee as I do.
I got 0 sugar Mountain Dew.
We're recording well into the evening. This is my 30th cup, but that's what happens when you have to write, Mark. So you gotta you need the caffeine. But okay, so I understand. I've been to lots of cars and coffees, and I'll admit, I will walk around and see the oohs and ahs. Do I drool over them? No, because I know there's no bringing any of those home ever. But then I gravitate towards the Mustangs and the Fords because that's just me. And I generally like it. I'm not knocking that thing, but what I'm knocking is I haven't really had, maybe once or twice had an opportunity to spend some quality 15, 10, 20 minutes with somebody, but it's not like being in your club, Mark. It's not like, like Mike, when we would have a show, I like when we mentioned the show within a show, there's the way to bring the factions who normally wouldn't come to your show because they're just looking for a venue. Yeah, they don't want you're right. They don't want to be in the back lot of Dairy Queen.
Right.
So they would like to be part of a car show. And this is the part that I'm trying to wrap my head around because, Club Connect, I founded that Mike? Geez, it's been over 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And we ran it all the way to the last year. And when I heard Ford was taking it over, I was really, oh my gosh, they understand. And they want to take it's the handoff and run it across the goal line. But their goal is different than what I had. I wanted to, my goal was, all right, clubs, what does Ford need to do to make you successful and grow? And I guess their goal is, how do I get those people who celebrate Ford into my events? Different goal. So my question for both of you now is, so we have both types of shows. Mike, I like the idea of the show within a show. That's why we like going to Carlisle, which for a lot of people is a show within a show because they can meet up. They can have their little gathering at their tent and they can hang out, outside of the show field and they can do that. But the future is got to be one or the other because we can't just keep taking these factions, if you will, of Mustang love and chopping it up. Mark, you and I have discussed, it used to be you're in your Mustang club, but then somebody wasn't specific enough. So he made it the early Mustangs only club, and one guy made it the Red Mustang Club, and then some bunch of you guys broke off and they made Mustang 2s only, and then one guy's the Fox Body guys, and so we've had that one club, and they've called all broken up into small little pieces. How do we bring this all together, Mark?
John, this is also different too. Mark, did your club, when you guys did your show, was it Mustangs only or was it an all Ford show?
It was an all Ford show.
So me and Mark can agree on this then too. That opened up a lot of doors. John, remember I had an Edsel reunion. Mm-hmm. We had Thunderbird reunions. We had Cougars. We had all kinds of stuff like that to bring in too with the show within a show. Like you said, they were looking for a venue. They didn't know if they could do it. They couldn't pay for the cost for that. So for them, we just traded off. We'll provide everything for you. You guys just show up. And it worked out very well. And since I got on the board and was the show chairman, John, back in 2005, I've had a theme, if you will, or a show within a show at every single show that I ran.
So, Mark, do you see then maybe we do an age group within a show? If you're 35 and under, bring your projects, your V8 small block Ford Miatas or...
I mean, I could very much see that, and that sort of dovetails with kind of what the David and Pam Rose are doing it with the Mustang Club of Ohio with their whole youth program. Is they're and you guys know about that. I mean, they have I think it's ages 6 to 15 now or 16, and they've got segments broken up within that. And they let the kids do whatever and be the judges for their particular group. So they're basically, kind of segmenting the youth group. So why not carry that out the other side and, have something for the younger folks. But, it's hard to say. I mean, talking with Jacob, talking with Robert, and talking with Marshall, our three young board members now, it almost seems in some ways, I mean, obviously Jacob mentioned to you guys, having Robert as our longtime vice president was a kind of a welcoming thing too, seeing another young face in the group. So that is important, but I think there's also a certain comfort level with kind of an established, structured club. So it's kind of a blend of things. I don't know that it's an all or nothing kind of scenario, at least for those three guys anyway. So I don't know.
Well, that's good to hear, Mike. How many times have we over the years found out about a new club that formed? Maybe it was Toledo Mustangers or that was an independent club. They rocketed to big membership. They were really hot for a couple of years, and then for whatever reason they faded away and they were gone. Yeah. And then people are left to pick up the pieces. Maybe I think, Mark, what people who are thinking about getting into the Mustang community via a club, what they should think about is what is the viability of this club lasting more than a couple of years? And I think the more established clubs have proven that, they know how to put together a group that can be social, it can be event driven, and it can just be fun on a summer night if that's what they want. I think that gives us a leg up.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mike, you and John have said this, ad nauseum. I agree with you 100%. And I have some friends that are involved in other clubs. Like, for example, a good friend of mine has a tractor club, which they do farm. But the whole, we always say it's the thing that brings us to the club. It's the people that keeps us there. And that's what it's really about. I think if you can build a lot of friendships and a lot of relationships within the club, and I don't think I'm alone in this. I actually enjoy the stimulation of hanging out with the younger guys. I mean, nothing against us old people, but they bring an energy, they bring some ideas. It's just a different kind of energy, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it, and different outlook on things. And I find that exciting and engaging. I think some clubs can get into a mode where it's rinse, wash, repeat, and they don't really try anything new to move the club forward. And I guess it's my business background to a large degree that the old adage is, if you're not moving forward and you're staying, if you're staying where you are, you're technically moving backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Mark, let me touch on that too. Is that what you said? You hit the nail on the head about the cars brought us together, but it's the people that make the difference. You make lifelong friends. I can say personally right now, I know my dad met his best friend in the car club, and they were best friends till the day he passed away. And he all met him through the car club. He would have never did it. And in case you haven't noticed, I met my best friend in the entire world, and he's on this podcast with us right now. But I would have never met John.
Dave Parasak is on the podcast.
I would have never met John without the car club. And the funny thing is, it was another member of the club that came and said, "Hey, Mike, you got to go meet this guy. He's doing a book signing this weekend at a dealership. Come, I want you to meet him. I think you should, meet with him. You guys are going to get along really well." And I met with John, and we set up a lunch date that day. And as they say, the rest is history. But I mean, John, that was 20 years ago, damn near 20 years ago.
Do you have to put, did you have to put a number on how many years, Mark?
But I'm just saying, I mean, look where it's let us grow, Mark. I mean, me and John are best friends. We did the podcast together now. We've accomplished so many things together on pulling off events, especially for Ford Motor Company, getting guest speakers at our meetings all the time. But it's all about those people you meet once you get brought into the club, and then the bonds and the relationships that you build over that time is priceless, in my opinion.
I agree.
Well, Mark, I mean, come on. First of all, I saw all those young people clicking the podcast off right there. 20 years together.
I'm not even 20 yet, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So the thing is, Mark, in Detroit, we have something that burst upon the club scene just a few years ago. Mike and I'm talking about modded Detroit, how they were just a couple of kids who didn't like, I don't know, the way they were being treated at a car show, and decided, hey, let's bring whatever you got, run what you brung, and let's hang out together and do and it was all pretty much Instagram based, and then they were doing videos, and then it grew from one thing, and now it's the biggest thing since sliced bread. And Mike, I see them facing the same kind of, the exact same things Mark was talking about. Now they're starting to add fees. The guys that are running are going to determine what charities they help. They decide where to go. You can't sit down at a meeting and say, here's where I think we should go. I don't know how they can manage all this. And I think maybe that, Mike, am I wrong? Is that just the trend kind of thing? And do you both see us turning back someday to the more established clubs so we can have some order on what we do and everybody gets a say?
John, remember at the summit last year that we did, it was brought up to us that, really want to get the younger people involved, blah, 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 blah. After that summit, went to the meeting, and the gentleman who brought that up said, I was looking at the general meeting after the summit, and he goes, I looked out in the audience and seeing a ton of people. They were all older, but they had the biggest smiles on their face, like this might be their only night to get out from the month. They get to see their buddies, they get to learn something new, and they get to hang out with the people who have the same interests as them. So it's like a big night. He said, so he retracted his statement of the younger people have to be involved in this and that. Yes, it's nice if they are, but it's not the only reason to keep going in the future. That's at least my take. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's, I actually, it was It was my very last meeting, and as John had, and you had, realized when you were talking to Jacob, I'd been advertising. When I took the job 2 years ago, I said, I'm just doing this for 2 years. I'm done. So I advertised this from day one and kept reminding people. Of course, you get to to voting night, and nobody's raising a hand, and we actually had some emotional people, which kind of surprised me. I mean, one lady was in tears, and I looked out at everybody and basically said what Mike and I just said, and that I said, this club really doesn't need a president, and everyone kind of got quiet. I said, it's about relationships, and everyone starts nodding their heads, yes, yes, yes. And I said, I stand up here and I go through this boring agenda, and to be honest with you, we could completely do away with that. You folks all love to get together once a month at a certain restaurant to catch up with your friends. To your point, that might be their only opportunity to see their friends. So I mean, I think a lot of times that's what brings them to into the meetings in the first place.
Well, there you guys go again, giving me hope. And Jacob, when we had Jacob, you guys go back to our podcast that when we celebrated the fact that he took over the Greater Pittsburgh Mustang Club and talked about his ideas for the future, and Mike, and that gave me hope. But I think what you guys are saying is, that these things are going to come and go, trends come and go. But you guys do see the value, because I think what you're talking about, Mark, and especially Mike, when you talked about the relationships, the value in that is that's not a club thing. That's human nature. And we're not going to change that. And as long as the government doesn't make driving cars illegal pretty soon, we have to get in a auto set mobility pod and be delivered somewhere, like we're one of those robots delivering a McDonald's to your house. As long as that happens, I think Mike, we may have a place for traditional clubs. So it is not tragedy. This may be just a trend we're going through.
Right.
Okay, that brings us to the big finale then. Okay, so what do we have? And you should both weigh in on this, because what do we have if we're going up against this trend and everybody's jumping in and we can get up at 12. We don't have to even take the garbage out of our back seat. We don't have to wash our car. I got to get to my sister-in-law's at 2:00. I don't like the plastic trophies this year. All those people that have kind of bailed on the clubs as we shrunk down, and all those young people that said, like my own son, and Mike, I'm not going to throw Jeremy under the bus. He's got a Mustang. He loves the club world. He loves you. He loves Moxon. But he said to me, Dad, sometimes those meetings are boring. My own child. I blame his mother. No.
Did he only say that when you were speaking?
No, Jenny said, don't tell him that. No, so, but what I think we have is, and what Mike, I know you've been pushing, is a lot of these clubs that are, we want just the S550s or just the Fox bodies. That's great, because that's what they own, and I'm happy for them. But I think eventually, when you get a little older, and Mark, I'm not saying we're older. I'm just saying we're older. And when we get to be in the club world this long, I actually enjoy seeing things other than an S197, which I own, and an S550. Because if I wanted to see those, I could go to my used car lot at Gorno Ford and go see some old Mustangs. I don't want to go I want to go to a car show. And Mike, I think the challenge may be, and for Jacob as well, to keep the guys that have the first generation Mustangs, to bring those to the show. Yeah, that the bi-ply tires are flat and the battery's dead. The points are crusty, but as long as we have first and second and Fox bodies and SN95s, and they're all there as part, I think that's what makes a traditional club better. Sorry, kids, than your specific show, because that gives you an idea about Mustang. It's not a one-trick pony.
John, that bring up a great point. Me and you, what do we love the most, I think, at Carlisle is seeing those kind of cars that you never even see. What was the station wagon we seen? I don't know if it was a Galaxy or whatever it was, or a Falcon or something.
Yeah, it was a Fairlane wagon.
Yeah, like cars like that you do not see at your local shows. Those are ones there, but we spent the most time in the world at that car because that caught our attention. You don't see it every day. It's not one of 800 S550s that are at the show. This is one off basically. And Ron and Helena Semler, they had a station wagon that they were brought to Carlisle after they had just purchased it. That was the first time I ever met them, and that's the memory that's etched in my mind because the first time I met them, they were driving that cool car that you don't see anywhere.
Yeah, Mark, but they were trying to do the family truckster. I'm surprised they didn't have Edna on the roof. They bought them all. I'm surprised that she wasn't tied up there. But that's the love for Fords. But I'm just thinking, maybe guys, we're too worried about this, and I think as long as, like you have done, Mark, set Jacob up for success, they're going to find their own way. And whether we're looking at trends, I don't think we are headed for the great downfall of automotive clubs anytime soon. What about you guys?
Well, I will say this. Because I was also the MCA regional director for our club for 4 years, 2 of those concurrent with the president's job. I want to say it was the second year I was in that role. There was a gentleman, I wish I could remember his name. He was the MCA coordinator he was on the board of the MCA. Really nice guy. And we got into an email discussion one day about clubs, and because they would send us their quarterly report, their meeting reports, and you'd see all this data in there. And I asked him, I said, it seems like you're getting fewer clubs joining the MCA than those that are rescinding their memberships. And he actually told, and this really shocked me, that I guess it was probably 3 years ago, he told me there were 33 clubs out of, I don't know, how many MCA clubs are there, 150, 160 in the country, something like that. 33 clubs that were on the edge of going under.
Wow.
And I said, what? And he's like, and he himself was from Texas, and his own regional club was no longer. He was a man without a regional club. And this just caused my head to spin because I'm thinking, wow, our membership isn't growing at huge rates. We have a replacement, we have so many people leave and the same number come in, so we're around 240, somewhere in that range, pretty consistently. But that just blew me away. And it causes you to scratch your head. It's like, well, what caused those clubs to go under? And I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. it's.
So, Mike, do you really think that the younger generations haven't had the exposure from their, you didn't build a car with your dad, you didn't hang out with him, and he was, the kids had other things, video games and other things to keep them occupied. Plus, affordability, I think, is now a factor. Try to find a cheap $500 Mustang. Back when I was a teenager, a '67 coupe with rust in the quarters, you could get for $500-600. And
but
beat the
what
hell out
Mark
of it.
was saying is, about those clubs going under. You got to remember, in my personal opinion, what I think is, you got to make sure you offer a lot of benefits to the members, because if they're not seeing they're getting anything out of it, they're not going to show up. And then the people who are running it and doing all the work, me and John can both attest, you get tired of that too. So if they start slacking off or pulling back, if you will, the events don't come off as strong because no one else wants to step up. So then it's a less great experience for the members or the participants who are coming to it. So they all just kind of start going their own ways. And then after that, the money just starts dwindling because there's no more income because people aren't showing up. And then the club has web site dues. They have maybe a meeting space due, storage dues, whatever it is. You have to buy stuff for operating expenses, things like that. And then, at some point, it just gets to where you can't even operate anymore. That's my personal opinion. I think not with all of them, but I think with some clubs, I think that's happening.
Right. And I think too, and I never really thought about this until Jacob mentioned it during the podcast he did with you guys. But when we instituted Club Express as our website platform, it was mainly to get my poor wife away from the computer because she had a keyboard in every single member's, and I used to sit there and watch her into the evening doing this. I'm like, you got to be crazy. And I think it was the second summit that John invited me to, and I remember asking one of your tech guys, and they threw out
Craig,
and he threw out I forget, it was something apricot. And I'm like, and another club member, once I mentioned that, said, well, Club Express is very similar. And, I convinced the board that we should do this. And when you get the younger people in and they see that, they're like, well, okay, this kind of has it going on. And I guess
that certainly is it's an advantage of having that technology. Younger people obviously are better at it, and that's fine because they're not as good at the stuff that we are. It's like working on cars, for example. But the issue I saw with that is, at one time, Mark, and I don't know if anybody out there knows this, but when I first established Club Connect at Ford Racing with Mickey Mattis, who was my marketing manager at Ford Racing, we wanted to make that the home of clubs. And they said to John, you know a lot of these people, what do they say they need? And one of the first things, Mark, was so many clubs were, and I made a joke about it at a previous podcast, that they were always trying to get their website working or up to date, because a young guy would come and join the club for a while, then he'd go off to college, and then his grandpa couldn't even remember the passwords.
And John, and you always say that you always made that point too, that you'd go onto a website to help somebody, right? To get, or we're coming in town and we need something like this, and you would click on the president, never get a response. And then you find out that he passed away like 4 years earlier, but was still listed as president on the website.
Mark Schaller, when he was trying to do Bullets Across America, he was the Mustang brand manager and wanted to stop at clubs along Route 66, Mike, during that launch. He got on the MCA site and went and called these clubs, and some of these guys were passed away. Some of the numbers didn't work. Even on Club Connect, we've been in the maintenance mode for a few years. I'd say 20% of that needs updating. You got to stay on top of that. And that's the key to have any platform. But I don't know if you guys know this. What I first suggested to Ford Motor Company is what they should do, in my opinion. What do I know? They should offer, if you get into Club Connect, you would get a free club website template that Ford would host the website. They would give you the template. So all the websites would work the same. They'd look the same because you're in Club Connect. You would have your Facebook feed on one corner, which everybody's on Facebook anyway. If you sign off your club website, you go to the Facebook page. Then you would have a news feed in the center, and then you have like the president's corner or the board feed. So the Facebook feed would be here, and everybody's yip yapping over there. And then you have the president saying, "Hey, Tuesday we're going to the Longhorn Steakhouse for dinner." And then on the right side, Ford could have like fast news. Here's what's going on, and that was my idea. It wasn't expensive.
The ticker, remember, John? Remember we had the ticker,
the template, yeah. And I thought, boy, if this doesn't give everyone, just join Club Connect, you get a free website hosting service, and you would have access to the back end. How cool would this be? And of course, they didn't think it was that cool.
I thought it was great. I remember working on that with you, John, and we were talking about there was like a ticker, like the New York Stock Exchange would go around the top, and it would be like, "Hey,
the crawler along the bottom.
It's the unveiling of the new GTD on June 13th."
We don't want to bother. I said, well, you did it with the Ford Dealer Network. Remember, Mike? All the Ford dealerships had different websites, and they had a template. You had your Ford dealer, and you got to have your inventory on there. That's what they did with them. And I said, well, that would work with clubs. You couldn't get anybody there because 90% of the people I was talking to had never been to a car show, and they're not in a club. So what do they know? But anyway, and then that's and don't let me get on my soapbox about this, but that's, I think, was a determining factor, which we could have had we could really cemented our place with keeping those established clubs going by having communications tool. Because Jacob mentioned this, it's how you communicate with your members, and the more what is that, Mark? Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
If you only just hope they show up every month, it's not going to work that way. You're not going to see them. So maybe there's hope, Mike. If we use technology in our favor, we continue to save our old cars and bring them to the forefront. And I think you guys are both agreeing. What I'm hearing is there's going to be some reduction in the overall footprint of the car enthusiasts in the United States, at least, as our population grows older and fewer young people get into automobiles as a hobby. That's just going to be a given.
Well, I don't know if either of you guys saw the one Ford Authority that was posted today. It was really quite surprising. It was a survey done, and I can't remember the survey group. But
some teenager.
Yes.
Group.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
I mean, I was quite surprised by that.
Well, okay, so Mike, they did a survey, and teenagers said that they still love driving. They still want to have had a car if they could afford one, and they don't really want minivans or SUVs or trucks. They want a small sedan, a fun sedan, but then Ford kind of twisted it, saying, "Oh, how about an EV sedan?" Please buy. They're going to stick that deworming medicine in your dog food, whether you like it or not. But so
you want to tell you something? This week we sold a Focus RS with 86,000 miles, something like that, for $30,000 still this week.
Wow.
That's insane money for a car that had that many miles and everything. People want those cars.
They love and want those cars. Of course, Mark Bedel knew that. Mike Ray knew that. John Clore knew that. But somebody at Ford had no idea. That was a shock. They had to get a survey done to find out what those young people are saying. Because Mark, they're not at the club show and they're not at the meeting. That is the problem. Okay, we've solved it. So all of you out there were worried, we're going to head for a tragic crash of the club world. Or maybe you thought, this is just a phase we're going through, like when your kid, turned out to be with the black hair and the nose ring, and you thought he'll grow out of it. It's going to be none of that. Don't panic. Don't worry. Some things we are going to get through this as a club hobby. And I think it's incumbent upon us, Mark, and you did a great job passing that torch, Mike. You got one of the craziest guys in the Detroit area running your club. And I think given, our passion for this car, if Ford can continue to bring in affordable, fun Mustangs that are actually Mustangs and not the pony on something else, I think we can make this happen. But I'm not blaming the kids anymore. It's not their fault. I blame Nintendo.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Warcraft or what is it? Red Dead Redemption and all. What's wrong with these kids? No. So, Mark, congratulations on doing such a great job. We thank you for constantly, keeping us on our toes, making us think about topics that are near and dear to people who like to listen to the podcast. And Mike, I think as long as we continue to discuss the things that are on everybody's minds, like we did when we go to a show and everybody talked to us in the tent, and the first thing I want to talk about is what's being said in the tent. I think we're going to continue to grow this platform, and I want this to be the place where everybody can talk this out and make it happen, because why? Everybody's got a Mustang story.
Hey,
Yeah, Mark, it's been an honor having you on with us tonight. I hope we see you in Carlisle.
If I can say one more thing to you guys.
Sure.
You guys are the ones that make all this happen. I mean, your representation of the Mustang hobby, what you've done for the clubs in particular, our club and others. I do want to say you validated a lot of ideas that I had, and gave me a lot more that I never would have thought of, and I try to put those into play into our club. And and you guys are fantastic. I mean, keep doing what you're doing, please.
Well, we would have loved to have kept that relationship with Ford as they go on in a new direction, but
we missed the summit this year a lot. A lot of people have still been reaching out to us, and it's something we have to pick back up here somehow, some way.
Mark, I can't thank you enough for saying that, because we're hearing it from our peers is what keeps us going. Not being validated by the corporate world, that's fine. As I used to say to all of our meetings, we own this hobby, not Ford Motor Company or people who run it. We decide what we celebrate. We decide how we celebrate, and just to be empowered to do that. And with your encouragement and your ideas and your support and all of the people out there that support us, I thank you for saying that, because that's what keeps, Mike, it is what keeps us going.
Well,
absolutely,
and
1,000%.
If you guys need help getting that summit back online, let me know. I'll do it.
We will definitely be in touch about that. We will, Mark, for sure. It'll be sooner than later as well.
You know what they say in the Army, never volunteer. Way to go, Mark Bedel, former president of the Greater Pittsburgh Mustang Club. Mike Ray, your Moxham work was a legend. Thanks, you guys, for all that input tonight. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. We hope that you hit that like and subscribe button. We want to hit our target of 1,000 subscribers. We're coming on it soon. But you know what's going to happen? As soon as we get to that 1,000 number, Mike Ray's going to say, we're going to get to 2,000. And as soon as we 10, get to 2,000, then Mike Ray says 10,000.
Yes.
So it's not going to stop. And I don't care even if you're 12 years old and your dad just told you what a Mustang is, that means you've got a Mustang
story. Yeah.
Well, until next time, thanks again for joining us tonight on the Mustang Owners Podcast, and we'll just have to catch you guys down the road.